She entered the Elven court as a captive, until the king recognized her presence. The sun had just disappeared behind the distant mountains, leaving the world bathed in the silver glow of the moon. Shadows stretched across the valley as Lyra was dragged through the forest, her hands bound with rough ropes that cut into her wrists. She stumbled over roots and rocks, her heart pounding in her chest. She did not know who these captors were, only that their hoods were dark and their movements silent. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the earth itself was trying to swallow her whole. After what felt like hours, the forest opened into a wide clearing. There, shimmering in the moonlight, rose the Elven court. Its towers glinted like crystal, adorned with delicate vines that seemed alive. The air was filled with a soft hum, a magic that Lyra could feel brushing against her skin. Her captors led her to the gate, where two tall guards with silver hair and sharp eyes inspected her before granting them entry. Lyra's breath caught as she stepped onto the smooth marble path. Every corner of the court glowed with soft light, lanterns floating in the air like captured stars. Trees with glowing leaves lined the streets, and small fountains of crystal-clear water sang songs she had never heard but somehow understood. This place was like nothing she had ever seen in her small, simple village, a kingdom of beauty and mystery, untouchable by time. But beauty did not comfort her. It only reminded her that she was out of place. Every pair of eyes she passed seemed to study her, judging her, measuring her worth. Whispers followed her, soft words in a language she could not understand, voices filled with curiosity and suspicion. At the center of the court stood the throne hall, massive and carved from white stone, vines creeping along its surface as if the building itself were alive. Two guards pushed Lyra forward and she stumbled into the vast room. Her eyes widened as she saw him, King Calian. He sat on his throne, tall and regal, with silver hair falling past his shoulders and eyes that shone like polished moonstone. His presence was commanding, yet there was a softness hidden beneath the perfection of his features, a subtle warmth that made Lyra's chest tighten. It was as if he could see her completely, through every fear and doubt she carried. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The court seemed to hold its breath. Lyra felt a strange pull toward him, something familiar yet impossible to place. She had never seen him before, at least not in her memory, but there was a memory buried deep in her heart, something she could not name. The king's gaze did not waver. Slowly he rose, his movements smooth and deliberate. The murmurs of the court grew louder, but he ignored them, stepping closer to the captive mortal. "Bring her forward," he said, his voice low and musical yet firm. The guards obeyed, nudging Lyra forward with gentle, unyielding hands. Lyra's knees threatened to buckle. Her mind screamed for her to run, but where could she go? Beyond these walls lay the forest, and beyond that, danger she could not imagine. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet the king's gaze. You are Lyra," Calian said, and his words made her heart skip. "Do you remember the forest long ago?" Lyra shook her head, confused. I don't understand," she whispered. The king's eyes softened for a brief moment, and a flicker of something, pain, longing, memory, passed across his face. "You do not remember, but I do." Lyra's stomach dropped. How could he know her name? How could he remember something she had long forgotten? Questions formed in her mind, but before she could speak, the court erupted in whispers and murmurs once more. She felt the weight of every gaze upon her, the curiosity and suspicion of beings far older and wiser than she could ever be. "You will remain in the hall of guests," the king said, gesturing toward a side corridor illuminated by floating lanterns. "Until you are ready to speak of your past, you shall be watched, but not harmed." Lyra was guided down the corridor, the soft glow of the lights casting shadows that danced like spirits on the walls. Her mind raced with questions she dared not ask. Why had her village been destroyed? Why had she been brought here? And most importantly, why did the king know her? The room they led her to was beautiful, with tall windows overlooking a garden where flowers glowed under the moonlight. A soft bed awaited her, and a small table held a pitcher of water. She sank onto the bed, her body trembling from exhaustion and fear. For the first time, the reality of her situation hit her. She was a captive in a world far beyond her understanding, and yet there was a strange sense of safety, too. Hours passed, and the moon climbed higher into the sky. Lyra could not sleep. Her mind replayed the king's words, the feeling of his gaze, the faint memory she could not grasp. The wind whispered through the open window, carrying the scent of the garden. She rose and walked to the glass, her fingers brushing against the cold surface. And then she saw it, a shadow moving across the garden, swift and silent. Her heart leapt. She was not alone. Before she could react, the door to her room burst open. A figure lunged at her, a dagger glinting in the moonlight. Lyra screamed, stepping back, but the figure moved faster than she could comprehend. Then a wave of silver light swept through the room. The intruder froze, eyes wide in shock, and then collapsed, unconscious at the foot of the bed. Lyra turned toward the source of the light, and there he was, King Calian. "Lyra," he whispered, and his voice held a tremor she had never heard before. "It is you." Lyra stared at him, confusion and fear mingling in her chest. It is me," she asked, her voice trembling. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I have waited for you longer than you can imagine," he said softly. "You do not remember, but your presence, it has always mattered." Lyra's mind reeled. Why? Why does it matter? The king's gaze darkened, and a shadow of pain crossed his face. "There are forces at work, old and cruel, forces that threaten this court, this kingdom, and perhaps even you. You are more important than you know." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. She had always been an ordinary girl, living an ordinary life. Yet here, in this world of magic and power, she was anything but ordinary. Before she could respond, a soft sound caught her attention, the faint hum of the castle walls, almost like a voice. The air seemed to vibrate, and Lyra realized that this place was alive in a way she had never imagined. Every stone, every tree, every whisper of wind carried magic older than time. Calian's expression grew grave. "You must stay here tonight. Tomorrow you will begin to understand why you are here and what your presence means for this court. But now rest. You are safe with me." Lyra nodded, though her mind was a storm of thoughts and questions. As Calian left the room, the shadow of the intruder slunk into the corners, now powerless and defeated. She sank onto the bed, exhaustion finally overtaking her, but sleep was uneasy, filled with dreams of silver eyes, glowing towers, and a voice calling her name. When she awoke, the moon had dipped behind the towers, leaving the first light of dawn to fill the room. She rose, still feeling the echo of the king's words in her chest. The world outside her window was alive with birds and shimmering light, but there was a tension in the air, a feeling that everything was about to change. As she dressed, a servant knocked and entered quietly. "The king requests your presence," they said softly. "He wishes to speak with you in the garden." Lyra's heart skipped. She did not know what awaited her, but some part of her, a part she did not understand, was ready. She followed the servant through the halls, each step echoing in the quiet grandeur of the castle. When she reached the garden, she saw him again, standing beneath a tree whose leaves glimmered like silver. The light of the morning sun caught his hair, making it shine like spun metal. "You came," Calian said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of relief and something deeper. Lyra swallowed. I am here," she said. He studied her silently for a long moment. "You do not remember our first meeting, do you?" Lyra shook her head, frustration and fear mingling in her chest. "No, I wish I did." He stepped closer, and for the first time, Lyra noticed the faint scars on his hands and arms, marks of battles fought long ago, battles she had never seen. "You will remember," he said softly. "In time, everything will come back to you, and when it does, you will understand why your presence here is not by chance." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest, a pull toward him she could not explain. Something deep within her stirred, a memory just beyond reach. And then a rustle came from the edge of the garden. Lyra turned, fear tightening in her chest. A dark figure watched from the shadows, hidden among the glowing leaves. Kalian's eyes narrowed. "You are not safe yet," he whispered. "The world has not forgotten you, nor have the enemies that seek to use you." Lyra's heart pounded. She was a captive, a stranger in this world of eternal beauty and magic. Yet she sensed that her life had changed forever, and that the king, this mysterious, silver-eyed man, was now a part of it in ways she could not yet understand. And in that moment, she realized that the adventure, the danger, and the truth of her past were only beginning. The morning sun filtered through the silver leaves of the elven garden, casting dappled patterns on the marble paths. Lyra followed the servant's quiet steps, her heart still racing from the night's events. The shadow in the garden lingered in her mind like a warning. She could not shake the feeling that her arrival in the elven court was no accident. King Kalian waited beneath the ancient silver-leaf tree. The soft light kissed his hair, making it shimmer like strands of moonlight. He looked regal, yet there was something more in his expression, a flicker of worry that only someone truly connected to him could notice. "You came," he said softly, "not as a king to a captive, but as one soul to another. I hoped you would." Lyra swallowed and nodded. I don't understand. Why am I here? Why did you say you remember me?" Kalian's gaze softened. He gestured for her to sit on the low marble bench beneath the tree. "Long ago," he began, "you wandered near the edge of the forest. You were small, frightened, lost. I saved you from danger, though you were too young to understand. Since that day, I have never forgotten you." Lyra's mind spun. She strained to recall any memory of a stranger with silver eyes in a forest, but it remained a shadowy blur, fleeting and distant. I remember nothing," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That is why you are here now," Kalian said, his tone firm yet gentle. "There are forces at work in this kingdom, forces that have waited for you as much as they have waited for me. You have a part to play, Lyra, though you do not yet know it." Lyra shivered, unsure whether to feel fear or curiosity. She had always thought herself ordinary, yet this man, the king of a world she could barely comprehend, spoke as if she carried a secret power within her. A soft hum echoed through the garden, and the leaves shimmered. Lyra noticed a faint glow from her own hands. She gasped. I feel something," she said, voice barely audible. Kalian's eyes widened slightly. "Yes," he said. "Your blood carries a rare energy, a bridge between mortal and magic. It is why the court watched you when you arrived. It is why the shadows have not forgotten you." Lyra pulled her hands close, trembling. "Shadows. The enemies of this court," Kalian said, his voice darkening. "They seek to use your presence to claim power. They do not yet know how dangerous you truly are." Lyra's fear battled with a strange sense of purpose. She had been nothing but a village girl, and now she was a key figure in a world of magic, curses, and centuries-old politics. The weight of her destiny pressed on her chest, but she also felt a spark of courage. Before she could ask more, the hum of magic grew stronger. A flickering light appeared in the air, forming shapes that danced like silver mist. Lyra gasped. What is that?" "The court has ways of revealing truths," Kalian said quietly. "It shows what is hidden. Sometimes it is used for knowledge, sometimes for warnings." Lyra's eyes followed the light, and she felt it stir something deep inside her, memories she could not name. Faces she had never seen, voices she could not place, and a sense of being watched, protected, and tested all at once. Suddenly, a servant approached from the shadows. "Your Majesty," they said, bowing deeply, "a council awaits you in the Hall of Secrets. They request the mortal who arrived last night be presented." Kalian's eyes flicked to Lyra. "It seems your introduction to this court is only beginning," he said. "Come with me." The hall was vast, with high ceilings carved from white stone, walls etched with intricate symbols and glowing runes. A circle of elders sat at the center, their silver hair gleaming in the soft light. They regarded Lyra with a mixture of curiosity and caution. One elder spoke, her voice melodic and commanding. "You are Lyra of the mortal lands. Why do you appear here at the threshold of our kingdom?" Lyra's throat tightened. She had no answers, only questions. Kalian placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and she drew courage from his presence. I do not know," she said softly. "I was brought here, but I feel as if I am meant to be here." A murmur ran through the council. Another elder leaned forward. "The blood of mortals rarely holds such power, yet we sense it in her. Perhaps she is the key to what has been foretold." "The key?" Lyra asked, panic rising in her chest. "I don't understand." Kalian's eyes softened as he addressed the council. "She is not only the key but also the bridge. Her arrival was predicted, though none expected it so soon. She must be trained, guided, and protected." Lyra's heart raced. She had never imagined herself in such a role. Ordinary, frightened, powerless, these were all things she had been. Yet now she was expected to bear a responsibility far beyond anything she could have imagined. After the council meeting, Kalian led her through hidden corridors to a small chamber filled with ancient books and glowing artifacts. The air hummed with a quiet magic that made her skin tingle. "This is the Hall of Knowledge," he said. "Here you will learn if you are willing. Knowledge is the first step to understanding your role and your power." Lyra's eyes roamed the room, taking in the floating tomes, scrolls of intricate design, and objects pulsing with light. She felt overwhelmed, yet something inside her stirred, a curiosity, a desire to understand, to grow, to be more than she had ever been. "Will it hurt?" she asked softly. Kalian shook his head. "Understanding yourself may be frightening, but it will not harm you. Fear is natural. Courage comes from facing it." For the next hours, Lyra learned the basics of the magic that ran through the court. She discovered that her touch could awaken dormant energy in objects, that her thoughts could guide light, and that her very presence seemed to resonate with the living essence of the castle. "You are more connected than most mortals could ever be," Kalian said, watching her carefully. "But that also makes you a target. You must learn quickly and you must learn well." As the sun dipped low again, casting long shadows across the marble floors, Lyra and Kalian walked through the garden once more. The soft glow of the flowers reflected in the pool of water at their feet. Silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken words. I still don't understand why you remember me," Lyra said finally. "Why does it matter to you?" Kalian paused, his eyes reflecting the silver light of the trees. "It matters because fate has intertwined our paths," he said softly. "Because even before this moment your life touched mine in ways you cannot yet see. Because your presence here may save not just me but the entire kingdom." Lyra's chest tightened at his words. "I feel so small. How could I save anyone?" "You are not as small as you think," he said, a rare smile brushing his lips. "Strength is not measured by size or skill alone. It is measured by the courage to stand when all the world expects you to fall." Lyra looked at him, and for the first time she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could be more than a captive. Perhaps she could be a part of something greater. A sudden rustling came from the garden's edge, sharp and deliberate. Lyra's heart jumped. Before she could react, a dark figure emerged, cloaked and masked, moving with deadly precision toward them. Kalian's hand shot out, pulling Lyra behind him. "Stay back," he commanded, his voice low and dangerous. Silver light flared from his hands, casting the figure into stark shadow. The intruder hesitated, then vanished into the night with a whisper of darkness. Lyra's chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath. "You see," Kalian said quietly, "even now danger follows you. The court is not safe for one such as you, but neither is the world beyond these walls." Lyra's fingers trembled as she grasped his arm. I don't know if I can do this." "You will," he said firmly, yet with warmth. And I will be here. You are not alone, Lyra." For the first time since her arrival, Lyra allowed herself to believe that perhaps she was meant to be here. That perhaps her presence in this mystical, dangerous court was not a mistake, but a purpose she had yet to discover. The wind rustled through the glowing leaves, carrying whispers that only Lyra could feel, as if the forest itself acknowledged her presence. And as she looked at the king, tall, silver-eyed and quietly commanding, she realized that this journey was only beginning. A storm of secrets, danger, and destiny awaited them, and she would have to face it all. But with Kalian by her side, perhaps she could endure anything. And yet, in the shadows of the distant towers, eyes watched, patient and unyielding. The game had only begun. The night air hung heavy over the Elven court, carrying the scent of glowing flowers and distant rain. Lyra walked through the corridors, her hands still tingling from the morning's lessons in magic. Each step echoed against the marble walls, and every shadow seemed alive with whispers. She had grown accustomed to the soft hum of enchantments that filled the castle, but tonight it felt different, darker, more urgent. Kalian followed closely, silent as a shadow. His expression was unreadable, but Lyra sensed the tension beneath his calm exterior. She had come to rely on his presence, the quiet certainty that he was near, but now even that did not calm her. "There is something I must show you," Kalian said, his voice low and measured. "Something that will change what you understand about this kingdom and yourself." Lyra nodded, heart thumping. She had already learned that life in the court was never ordinary. Every moment was filled with magic, secrets, and unseen forces. She was no longer a frightened captive. She was becoming someone strong, capable, and aware of the responsibility her presence carried. They reached the Hall of Ancients, a chamber hidden beneath the castle, accessible only through a spiral staircase carved into living stone. The walls glimmered with runes that pulsed with a pale blue light, illuminating shelves filled with scrolls and artifacts older than time itself. "Here," Kalian said, guiding her to the center of the hall. "This is where the oldest knowledge of our people is kept. It is here that you will learn why you are so important to the kingdom." Lyra's eyes widened. She had studied some of the simpler texts earlier, but this hall was beyond anything she had imagined. The magic here was alive, breathing, almost aware of her presence. Kalian stepped closer, his silver eyes reflecting the soft glow. "Long ago, a curse was placed upon this court, a darkness that waits for the blood of mortals to awaken its full power. You, Lyra, carry that blood. Your presence is both a danger and a salvation." Lyra's breath caught. "A curse," she whispered. I am part of it." "Yes," he said, his tone steady but gentle. "But you are not alone. I will guide you. The court will protect you. And you have a power that even the curse cannot ignore." The words filled her with a mix of fear and determination. Fear because the danger was real, far beyond anything she had faced. Determination because, for the first time, she understood that she could matter, she could act, she could change what was coming. Kalian handed her a small, glowing crystal. "Focus on this," he said. "Let your energy flow through it, feel it, understand it." Lyra held the crystal, trembling at first, then slowly, carefully, she let her mind reach out, letting her thoughts flow into it. The crystal pulsed with light, brighter and warmer, and she felt a connection, a resonance deep within her. Magic was no longer a mystery, it was a part of her. "You are learning quickly," Kalian said, watching her with a mix of admiration and concern. "But power alone is not enough. You must also learn to protect yourself from those who would use it." Before Lyra could respond, a sudden alarm rang through the castle. The soft hum of the Hall of Ancients was drowned by the sound of urgent bells and rushing footsteps. Kalian's expression darkened. "They have come," he said, gripping her hand briefly. "The shadows that have been watching us, they are here." Lyra's heart raced. "Here, in the castle?" "Yes," Kalian said, "and they seek you." They ran through the corridors, the glow of the castle turning into a blur as shadows moved in the corners of her vision. Guards rushed past, and servants hid behind pillars, their faces pale with fear. Lyra realized how fragile even the most beautiful place could be when danger was near. They reached the main courtyard, and the sight that greeted them made her stomach twist. Figures cloaked in darkness had appeared, moving with unnatural grace. They carried weapons that shimmered with a dark magic, and their eyes glowed faintly red. "Stay behind me," Kalian ordered, raising his hands as silver light shot from his fingers. The intruders faltered, struck back by the brilliance of his power. Lyra felt a surge of courage and instinctively raised her hands. Light flowed from her palms, joining Kalian's magic to form a protective barrier around them. The clash of magic echoed through the courtyard, sparks flying, shadows writhing. Lyra's heart pounded, not just with fear but with exhilaration. She was no longer a captive. She was part of this world, part of the fight, and she could feel her strength growing with every moment. One of the shadowed figures broke through the edge of their barrier, lunging toward Lyra with a dark blade. She acted without thinking, letting her energy surge. A wave of light exploded from her hands, throwing the figure back and sending it crashing against the stone wall. Kalian's eyes widened in surprise and pride. "You are ready for more than I thought," he said, voice tense but impressed. The intruders withdrew, melting into the shadows as quickly as they had appeared. The courtyard was silent once more, except for the hum of the castle and the sound of their own breaths. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted and shaking, yet alive with a sense of power she had never known. I did it," she whispered. "Yes," Kalian said, kneeling beside her. "And you will do more. But you must learn to control this power or it could consume you." Lyra looked up at him, her silver-blue eyes meeting his. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, trust, understanding, and the beginning of a bond deeper than fear or duty. Later, in the quiet of the Hall of Knowledge, Lyra practiced under Kalian's guidance. He moved beside her like a shadow, correcting her movements, teaching her to focus her energy, to feel the life in every stone, every leaf, every breath of wind. "You have the heart of a warrior," he said softly, "and the mind of one who can change the future." Lyra blushed slightly, a mixture of pride and shyness filling her chest. She had never thought of herself in such a way, but his belief in her stirred something she could not ignore. As they paused, leaning against the balcony railing, the night stretched before them, the stars reflected in the river below. Lyra felt the weight of the world pressing against her, but she also felt something stronger, the presence of someone who would stand beside her, no matter the danger. But peace is always fleeting in a world of shadows. From the edge of the forest beyond the castle, a figure watched. Cloaked in darkness, silent and patient, it moved through the trees like a living shadow. Its eyes glowed red as it whispered words no one could hear, words that promised danger, betrayal, and tests of the heart. Lyra shivered, sensing the presence though she could not see it. "Do you feel that?" she asked Kalian, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his expression darkening. "Yes, the shadows are not gone. They are watching, waiting, and they know that you are the key." Lyra swallowed hard. I don't want to be the key for anything bad." "You are not alone," he said, placing a hand over hers. "I will stand with you, but you must face this. Courage does not mean the absence of fear, it means acting despite it." The wind rustled through the glowing leaves, and Lyra felt a strange resonance in her chest. Her energy pulsed, reacting to something she could not name. She looked at Kalian, and in his eyes she saw the same recognition, the same determination, and the same fear that she felt. Days passed in a blur of training, study, and quiet moments shared in the garden. Lyra learned to control her magic, to listen to the subtle currents of energy around her, and to anticipate threats before they arrived. She grew stronger with every passing moment, yet the shadows never left her thoughts. Then, one night, as the moon hung high in the sky, a message arrived. A scroll delivered by a black-feathered bird, inscribed with a symbol she recognized instantly, a dark sigil, the mark of those who sought to use her power for evil. Kalian read the scroll and his expression darkened. "They are moving faster than we anticipated," he said quietly, "and they know you are ready." Lyra's hands trembled as she held the scroll. "Ready for what?" she asked, voice tight with fear and anticipation. "Ready for a test," Kalian said. "A trial that will decide the fate of this kingdom and yours. We must act before they strike." Lyra's breath caught. She felt a mixture of dread and excitement. For the first time, she realized that everything she had learned, every lesson, every spark of courage would be tested. The shadow that had watched from the forest stirred again, moving closer, waiting for the moment to strike. Lyra and Kalian exchanged a glance, an unspoken promise to face whatever was coming together. But even as they prepared, Lyra could not shake the feeling that this trial was only the beginning. Something far greater, far darker, awaited them, and the bond she shared with Kalian would be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. And as the wind whispered through the silver leaves, a single thought burned in her mind. The night was far from over, and the rising darkness would not wait. The first light of dawn barely touched the towers of the Elven court, yet the air was thick with tension. The shadows that had lurked beyond the castle walls were no longer distant, they had arrived. Figures cloaked in darkness pressed against the gates, their eyes glowing red, their intent unmistakable. Lyra stood at the balcony of her chamber, watching the approaching forces. Her hands trembled, but the fear that had once consumed her was now tempered with determination. She was no longer the frightened village girl brought here as a captive. She had learned, she had trained, and she had grown. Her magic coursed through her like a living river, and she understood, in a way she never had before, that her presence could change the course of fate. Kalian stepped beside her, tall and commanding, his silver eyes reflecting the rising sun. "Today," he said, his voice steady but low, "everything we have prepared for comes to this. You are ready, Lyra, I know it." Lyra nodded, though doubt still lingered at the edges of her mind. "I hope I am," she whispered. "I cannot fail, not now, not when so much depends on us." "You will not fail," he said, placing a hand over hers. The warmth of his touch was grounding, a silent promise. "We stand together, that is all that matters." The court had gathered in the central courtyard, elves of every house, every age, lining the marble paths, their faces pale but determined. They had all trained, prepared, and readied themselves for this moment. Yet all eyes seemed to find Lyra. She could feel their hope and fear mingling, their trust resting on her shoulders. A horn sounded from the edge of the forest, and the shadowed intruders surged forward, their numbers greater than anyone had anticipated. They moved like a living darkness, weaving around the trees, their weapons shimmering with malevolent energy. Lyra felt a surge of power rise within her, instinct and magic guiding her hands. Kalian stepped forward, his own light flaring, casting the intruders back. Together they formed a barrier of silver and gold, holding the shadows at bay. "Focus," Kalian commanded. "Let your energy flow with mine." Lyra inhaled deeply and let the magic within her respond. Light shot from her palms, striking the advancing shadows. Each pulse of energy pushed them back, forcing them to retreat, but more continued to press forward. She realized that her power was growing with each challenge, responding to the threat with a strength she had never imagined. The battle raged across the courtyard. Kalian and Lyra moved as one, their combined power forming a protective shield over the court. Elven warriors fought at the edges, their arrows and spells cutting through the darkness. The courtyard was alive with energy, a clash of light and shadow that seemed to shake the very air. Then, from the far side of the field, a figure emerged, a leader cloaked in deepest black, radiating a dark power that made the ground tremble. Lyra's heart skipped. She could feel the danger radiating from him, a force designed to break her, to exploit her mortal blood. "You are the girl they speak of," the figure hissed, his voice like the scrape of stone. "The mortal who dares to stand against us. Your blood will open the path to power and your end will follow." Lyra's fingers tightened. She did not flinch. "I am not afraid," she said, her voice steady though her heart raced, "and I will not let you harm this kingdom or its people." Kalian moved to stand beside her, his light flaring brighter. "You are not alone," he said, his voice carrying over the battlefield. "Face this, Lyra, face it with me." The dark figure advanced, his magic colliding with their light. Lyra felt the shadows pressing in, but she focused, drawing on everything she had learned, everything Kalian had taught her. She reached deep within herself, feeling the currents of life and energy all around her, connecting with the castle, the court, and the very air. A beam of silver light shot from her hands, meeting the dark magic head-on. The collision threw her back and she stumbled, but Kalian caught her, steadying her with his strength. "You can do this," he said, his eyes burning with determination. "I believe in you." Lyra closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. The fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, all of it flowed into the ground beneath her, and she let it transform into power. Her light flared brighter, stronger than before, and the shadows around them began to waver. The dark figure roared in fury as Lyra's energy surged. She felt herself connected to Kalian in a way deeper than words, their magic entwining, their hearts beating in unison. Together, they became a force neither mortal nor immortal had ever wielded before. With a final surge, Lyra released the energy, a brilliant wave of silver and gold light that swept across the courtyard. The shadowed intruders shrieked and fell, dissolving into nothingness, their leader thrown to the ground, defeated. The air was still, heavy with the echo of power and silence. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted but alive. Kalian knelt beside her, his hands warm around hers. "You did it," he said, his voice a mixture of pride and relief. "You saved us all." The court erupted in cheers, their voices filling the morning air. Lyra looked around at the elves who had once watched her with suspicion, now gazing at her with respect and awe. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and something she could not name, a connection to this world, to its people, and to the man who had guided her every step. Kalian helped her to her feet, and for a moment they simply stood together, their eyes locked. Words were unnecessary. The bond between them, forged in danger and trust, needed no language. "You were incredible," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I have never seen anyone wield such power or such courage." Lyra smiled, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "Without your guidance, I would still be a frightened girl running from shadows." "You are no longer that girl," Kalian said softly. "You are more than mortal. You are part of this court, part of this kingdom, and part of my life." Lyra felt warmth flood her chest. The fear and doubt that had plagued her for weeks melted away, replaced by a sense of belonging she had never known. For the first time she felt truly seen, not as a captive, not as a tool, but as herself, strong and capable and worthy of trust and love. The court celebrated, but Lyra and Kalian remained in the quiet of the garden, away from the cheers and the light. They walked along the glowing paths, the soft hum of magic surrounding them, and the rising sun painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. "You are mine, in a way I cannot explain," Kalian said, his voice hushed. "Not as possession, but as connection. Our fates are intertwined, Lyra. You and I, we are stronger together than apart." Lyra's fingers intertwined with his. "I feel the same," she said, her voice steady. "I cannot imagine facing this world without you." He smiled, a rare, tender smile that made her heart flutter. "Then we face it together," he said. "No matter what comes, we will stand side by side." The shadows had been defeated, the court saved, but Lyra knew this was only the beginning. Danger and darkness would always lurk at the edges of their world. Yet with Kalian beside her, she felt ready for anything. As they returned to the castle, the wind whispered through the silver leaves, carrying a promise of new beginnings. The court, once suspicious of the mortal girl, now looked upon her with admiration. She had proven herself, and in doing so had carved her place in a world she had once thought impossible to understand. That evening, in the quiet of the throne room, Kalian placed his hand over hers once more. "You have changed everything," he said softly. "Not just the kingdom, but me. You have shown me what it means to hope, to trust, and to love." Lyra smiled, leaning closer. "And you have shown me courage, strength, and guidance. Together, we can face whatever comes." The castle, alive with magic and the lingering echoes of battle, seemed to breathe with them, acknowledging their union, their bond, and the strength they had found in each other. And though shadows might return and challenges might come again, Lyra and Kalian knew this truth. As long as they stood together, there was nothing they could not face. The first stars appeared in the sky, reflecting in the pools of water around the castle, and the world felt alive with possibility. The mortal and the king, bound by fate, courage, and love, stood at the beginning of a new era, one filled with hope, strength, and the promise of magic yet to be discovered. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but their story was only beginning. The end.